everyone. In this video, I want just to walk you through my process for creating a matrix and or outline. Now, I'm not going to collect this, but I strongly suggest doing one or the other or both. And this is why. When we've read a lot of research at this point, and you all have completed your annotated bibliographies. Now, what do? You have all these ideas swirling around in your head, and you have to somehow bring together a coherent manuscript. So you've looked over the guidelines for your journal, which my journal is the Michigan Reading Journal. That's what this manuscript is going to, where this manuscript will be submitted to. I'm working on this manuscript with a colleague of mine, Kira Anderson, as well as 4 tutors in the probationary reading program here at Northern. And so they're education students, so elementary and secondary education students. So Kara and I are actually the ones putting together this matrix, and then we're going to get feedback from the tutors, and we will get feedback for the outline too, and then we're going to jump into our manuscript. So what I like doing right away before I even start developing my matrix is to do a rhetorical analysis to set purpose and direction for what I'm doing. So the mode that I'm working in is going to be Michigan Reading Journal article. So of course I went and read all of the requirements to submit a article to the Michigan Reading Journal. Then I have to think about the audience for that particular journal. Mainly it's K-16 practitioners interested in teaching through a critical social justice lens. So the audience, K-16 practitioners, right? And then I know many K-16 practitioners who are currently struggling to teach through a critical social justice lens. So among those practitioners for the audience, I think that we will have a sub-audience in people looking for how to do this kind of teaching well. Our purpose argument statement is way too long, and this is a working document. So we're going to be changing this often and revising as we're writing our manuscript. But right now, it's when students are confident in their reading abilities, when they feel safe and valued in their classroom environment, and when they see the connection between literacy and self-empowerment, they are more likely to make reading comprehension gains, take academic and social risks, and value the multiple perspectives of their peers, thus being more open to broadening their worldviews through critical analysis and discussion of complex nonfiction and fiction text. While grammatically correct, this is way too long. We have too many ideas going on here, but the purpose of this right now is to guide how we're organizing our manuscript, and so we can come back and tweak that. Now, the situation, why is this important? Why are we writing this article? Why is it important to the field? So when students understand that human rights are not debatable and that inequity exists in all of society's institutions, which then results in oppression, they are better able and equipped to recognize how they're positioned within that society. And so once students understand what privilege means and that almost everyone has some form of privilege, while they also suffer from various forms of oppression, which is this idea of intersectionality, they are more likely to act on the world and work toward positive social change because they see their actions will benefit all. Like, that is one of the main purposes that we're writing this article. In the political climate today and in the era of fake news, it is more important than ever to teach our students to critically read in order to better understand the world they live in and to become positive agents of change. So we wanted to give ourselves some context and reminders for why we're writing this article and why this article should be read by K-16 practitioners. Okay. So once that's done, we created our matrix, and you can see that we only have just begun working on this. So vertically, so going down here, we have all of our resources, and we still have a couple more resources that we have to gather, one or two from the Michigan Reading Journal, and then I have a couple resources that I ordered through interlibrary loan that we might add here once we take a look at them. So we've obviously read the ones we have listed and evaluated them. And across the top, these are our 4 main themes that we want to integrate into our manuscript. So defining critical social justice and the complexity of the work, what the tutor's role is in critical literacy, and then the research pedagogies that support critical literacy that we've used in the classroom, combined with our own insights and experiences. So then what goes in the boxes? Well, for each one of the resources, what quotes do we want to use? What insights did we have while we were reading them? What data do we want to include, etc. So for defining the complexity of the work, I thought this was an outstanding quote by Sensoy and D'Angelo. And so I definitely wanted to integrate that. And so I have the quote there. And so we're going to go through for each one of these resources and pull out what we feel is most important from those resources for us to include in our manuscript. Now, each one of us did annotated bib entries for a different, for various resources. And so Sensoy and D'Angelo's mine, and I'm going to be going through and pulling for each of these themes. Okay, so then once that's done, you can move on in creating an outline. Now, I do already have some idea for how we're going to structure this paper because I've read many Michigan Reading Journal articles. And so I took our themes, I took our presentation, because remember, we presented on this topic at the Michigan Reading Association conference, and I took our organization from that presentation, looked at several mentor articles from the journal, and I'm thinking this is going to be about how we organize our paper. It will most likely change, and we'll be revising it slightly, but I think it's probably the structure that we want to take. So we're going to have the introduction, which we provide context, and then we introduce ourselves and position ourselves within the introduction for the work that we're doing. And then we're going to explain the difference between social justice and critical social justice. We're going to help our readers connect critical literacy to culturally responsive and socially just teaching. So here's where we're going to talk more about the complexity of the work, which again, I'm going to bring in, if we go back up here, that's where I'm going to bring in Sensoy and D'Angelo's quote. How we integrate that within our classroom instruction and curriculum, and why it matters, why critical social justice matters, which will tie nicely then into what the tutor's role is in helping our students be able to read literature critically and to think about the inequities that exist in the world and how they are positioned to make positive change. And so they do that through various pedagogies. They do a lot of scaffolding, effective questioning. And so this section, the tutors are going to write. And then Kara and I, my colleague and I, are each going to walk the audience through a couple of units that we've put together. Mine focus, my first unit's on racism and oppression, and then my second unit is more of a focus on intersectionality. So I will discuss text sets and research-based pedagogies that I integrated. Then we will close with implications for practice and probably a brief paragraph or so conclusion, hopefully leaving that positive impact on our audience. So again, this is more for your personal use. APA, grammar, none of that matters for this document. This is part of the writing process, and it's the rough part where you're bringing together all of your ideas from your annotated bibliography, from your evaluations, your critical reading of your research, and you're starting to formulate a plan for what that manuscript is going to look like. I would say that you should have anywhere, depending on the requirements for your journal article and the length of your journal article, anywhere from 2 to 4 themes, maybe more, but 2 to 4 probably for most of you. And then it's really up to you, depending on the requirements for your journal, how many citations, how many references you use from your annotated bibliography. I imagine most of you will use all of them, but maybe not. Maybe your journals really only want you to use 5 or 6 resources. You always have to go back to the requirements of the manuscript that the journal you submit to is asking you to use and implement. So I hope this was helpful. And if you have any questions, just post them in the collaborative problem solving forum. I am so looking forward to working with you on these drafts and walking you through the peer review process, which is a great process for you to not only strengthen your own writing, but also learn a lot about yourself as a writer through reading your peers' work and seeing their strengths and seeing where they can improve. All right, looking forward to reading your work. Have a great day.